Okay.
All right, y'all.
Yeah, I won't be back. I'll be from the funeral by then, but something Gail will,
We got a lot of ground to cover, and as much time as we need to get there. 'Cause we can pick it back up next week.
They take it for sure.
So we are doing, in master class, we're doing seminary at church, just to remind you, since we just spent a long time in the last section. And the idea behind this is that we're going to cover the material you would cover in a seminary degree.
Wow.
Not to the degree you would cover. I mean, you don't have to write papers or take tests, but just the subject matter that we're dealing with. And so, we won't go as deep because you're not writing the papers and presenting papers or anything like that. But I'm hoping I'm giving you something, well, I'm definitely giving you something more than you would get in the worship service on Sunday morning and generally in a Sunday school class. And so we just finished up New Testament survey, and so now we're going into the section on apologetics. And again, you can do a whole semester on apologetics. We're not going to do that. We'll do a few weeks on apologetics, so this will be an overview. But when I say apologetics, what is that?
Making a case for the gospel.
What?
Making a case.
Making a case for the gospel. Okay. Any other?
My first thought was making an apology, but I know that's not really.
Well, actually, it is making an apology. Depends on how you define apology.
Breaking down barriers.
Breaking down barriers,
Just defending the Bible.
defending the Bible. So we get the word apologetics from 1 Peter 3:15. Well, not from 1 Peter 3:15, but we get the idea of apologetics from 1 Peter 3:15, and there's a word in there that we get the word from. It says, "In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect." So where it says, make a defense, that is the Greek apologion, for an apology. The word apologia, where we get our word apology, does not mean saying you're sorry. It means defense. It's a word, if you break it down and do the etymology, it means for the word, or for a word, or for the words, or on behalf of the word. The idea is that what you're doing is backing up what you're saying, or backing up what you believe. Paul used the same words when he was arrested at the temple in Acts 22, and he asked the guys arresting him, "Can I say something to the crowd?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." And when he spoke, he says, "Hear the defense that I now make before you, the apology that I make before you." So, we think of an apology as saying you're sorry to something, but we do use the word apology and apologetics, and it's not just, there's apologetics for all kinds of fields, we have Christian apologetics, but any kind of belief system has apologetics, and so we talk about making an apology, like I'm making an apology for the Christian faith. I've done a lot of lecturing and conferences and stuff on apologetic preaching. And I talk about the apologetic pulpit. And so when we try to get down to a definition, as you can imagine, anybody that ever writes or talks about apologetics has their own definition. But here's my favorite definition. It's by Cornelius Van Til. Apologetics is the vindication of the Christian philosophy of life against the various forms of the non-Christian philosophy of life. Now, there are a couple of reasons I like this. For one thing, he talks about vindication instead of defense. And defense is part of it, and that's what the word means. But I like how the idea of vindication carries more the idea of making a positive case. Instead of we're on our heels defending ourselves. We're out there making a case for Christianity. And so I kind of like the positive tone that goes along with it. But I also like how he talks about the Christian philosophy of life, because Christianity is a holistic, another word for philosophy of life would be worldview, how you view the world, how you view everything in creation, how you view how we're supposed to live. That's the way you view the world, the way you look at the world, the lenses you look at the world through. And I particularly like this. It's a vindication of the Christian philosophy of life against, he doesn't say the various non-Christian philosophies of life, but the various forms of the non-Christian philosophy of life. And I like that he just kind of makes it simple. There's the Christian worldview and the non-Christian worldview. The non-Christian worldview comes in various forms. But basically what he's saying is you've got truth, and then you've got non-truth. And that non-truth can look a whole bunch of different ways, but they're all opposed to, they are non-truth in what they do and what they say. What I've run into at times is people denying the need for apologetics. And we ran into this a lot at seminary, is we would have students say that their pastors would always tell them, you don't do apologetics, that's for the academy, that's these guys that sit in their ivory tower and talk about stuff, that's not real stuff. Or some of them would say, you don't need to defend the faith, you just need to preach the word. But we have a biblical mandate to do apologetics. For one thing, we have 1 Peter 3:15, which says that we're always to be ready to make a defense for the hope that is within us. And I love how he talks about to do it with gentleness and reverence. That you're not out there scrapping it out with people, you're doing it with kindness. Jude 3. Jude says, Beloved, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. In other words, Jude is saying, if you read all of Jude, it's just one chapter is why I just said, verse 3, is that people were corrupting the gospel. They were perverting the gospel. And so he's telling them, no, you've got to defend this. You've got to fight for it. You've got to contend for it. And then, and by the way, we could do a lot of these. I just gave you 3. 2 Timothy 2, 22 through 26, Paul is writing to Timothy about false teachers. And he says, so flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. By the way, when he says flee youthful passions, he's not talking about like sexual lust. What he's talking about is, what do we old guys know that's different from when we were younger? We used to love to scrap it out, right? I mean, man, I was always ready for a fight. Not necessarily a fist fight, but it didn't take much to get my hackles up. And what he's saying is that's a youthful desire. And you got to avoid that. When you get mature, you learn how to control your mouth, you learn how to control your temper. And he goes on to say, have nothing to do with foolish. What's that?
Nothing. She said it, not me.
I didn't say it, I just pointed to it.
You two behave.
Yes, sir.
Let me repeat.
I'm sorry.
Have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels, and the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil, correcting his opponents. So we correct with gentleness. God may perhaps grant them repentance leading to a knowledge of the truth, and they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will. We see apologetics throughout the Bible. In the Old Testament, there was one primary apologetic, and that was about the fact that there was only one true God. Because if you read the Old Testament, how much of it has to do with idolatry? And like you read the prophets, and I just got through reading Isaiah, and you get to chapter 40 in Isaiah and all the way through, he's telling them how foolish it is to chop down a tree, take some of the wood, burn it, take some of the wood, make a god out of it that's got to be carried all around. So what are you doing? And what he's doing is he's arguing that there's only one true God, and he's reminding them of what God has done for them. In the New Testament, you actually see more apologetics coming out. You see these arguments made for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, you see arguments against, when some of them were requiring circumcision. And Paul writes like to the Galatian church, and they deal with this some in Acts that, he's making a case. He's arguing against the need to be circumcised to be saved and making a case for salvation by grace through faith apart from works. Christ is fulfillment of the Old Testament, and the book of Hebrews is an apologetic to Jewish people they're Jewish believers, but it's an apologetic for Jesus being the fulfillment of the Old Testament. When Paul goes into Antioch, in the synagogue in Antioch in Acts chapter 13, what does he do? But he stands up and he reads the word and says, this is Jesus. We have him now. He's making a case for Jesus as fulfillment of that. You see apologetics for the return of Christ, apologetics for the nature of Christ. You also see the apologetics for Jesus being God and for there being one true God. I mean, this is all in Acts chapter 17 in Athens. When he's talking to all the philosophers, and he says, I've been walking around Athens all day looking at all, you got gods everywhere. In fact, it is said by one historian that there were more gods there than there were people. And he says, you have an altar to an unknown God. It's like, hey, let's cover all our bases.
Yeah.
And he says, the God you don't know, I'm here to tell you about. And he puts it on them. And so there is a biblical mandate for apologetics. But the next question is why? Why do we, what I mean here is why do we do it? I'm going to get into our objectives in apologetics later. But I want to sort of lay a foundation for why apologetics is needed today. And I'm going to, throughout the course of this, argue for apologetics in the church as well as apologetics outside the church. I'm going to give you just a few things, and I'm going to flesh a lot of this out. We're going to spend some time talking about this. People have questions. People have questions. And there is a lawyer in town. Terry can tell you. Whenever I see him in public, I can see him in Walmart, I can see him in Legends, wherever I see him, he goes, Reverend, I got a question. And it's always a Bible question. Like one day he goes, the Trinity. And I'm like, just pull up a chair. But really, people have questions. Don't you? Have you? How many of you been Christian longer than, say, a year? Okay, you still asking questions?
Oh, yeah.
Good. You should be. How long you been a Christian?
Since I was 7.
Okay. Don't make me do the math. I don't want to know how many years now. You backed me into a corner.
I'm 86.
Okay. So, you've been a Christian 79
79
years.
years.
Wow.
You've been a Christian 79 years.
I guess so.
I just loved you a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, that is just 79 years.
That's
She's been walking with Jesus. Has he let you down?
I'll let him down.
Oh.
Man, that's the answer for somebody who's been walking with Jesus for 79 years. You still have questions?
Yes.
You don't have it all figured out?
No.
See, everybody's got questions. I mean, and the world has questions. You get outside of the world, people still want to know where we come from. Why are they doing all this research? We have this speaker here. Why are all these people trying to do this research into where did life come from? They want to know, right? People want to know what happens. I was just asked this week, what happens to us when we die? An unchurched guy asked me that question. Well, I've heard some people say that your spirit stays around for a few days. I'm like, no. What do Christians really believe? I'm going to come back to questions, though, so just hold out on that. Doubts. People have doubts. I mean, there's believers and unbelievers both. And not only do people have doubts, but there's a lot of skepticism out there. I'm kind of a natural born skeptic. Like whenever I hear about like a miracle or something, my first reaction, unfortunately, is, really? And that's not healthy. I mean, I do think we should examine, but I tend to fall on the skeptical side. But if you think about it, we Christians believe some outrageous things.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the mirror. We believe a dude was swallowed by a fish. and stayed in there 3 days alive. It's outrageous. That's crazy. We believe a guy made an altar and cut up a bull, or was it an ox, an animal, doused it in water and prayed, and fire came from heaven to the point that it even burned up the rocks. That's outrageous. We believe a young girl got pregnant without being with a man.
Yes, exactly.
But we also believe God can do anything.
We do. But some of this stuff is, I mean, it's crazy talk, right?
It is.
And so, shouldn't we expect people to be skeptical? Like, I'm not mad at people who are skeptical. I'm like, well, of course you are. Not only do we believe some outrageous things, we believe some offensive things. I mean, we believe what Jesus said when he said, there's no way to the Father but through him. Well, man, you want to get somebody mad, you just drop that in the middle of the conversation. And that can be a conversation starter, or that can blow things up. We believe a lot of countercultural things. We believe guys shouldn't marry guys. And we're considered backwards for that. We actually believe guys can't become girls and vice versa. We even believe that even a male-female couple shouldn't live together before they get married, or sleep together before they get married. I mean, this stuff is totally opposite what the world believes. And so, of course, people are going to be skeptical. And there's even hostility. There's hostility towards Christians. I think at times it's increasing. I think, you should have seen the Facebook posts that we had when, we put an ad out on Facebook about that apologetics conference we had. And man, the wackos came out of the woodwork just accusing us of all kinds of stuff. And they're mad. Why are they mad?
I've always wondered that.
What have we done to them? Well, they're not mad at us. They're mad at God. Why are they mad at God? Who knows? Things didn't go their way. Maybe they got offended in the church one day. I mean, it could be. But there's hostility. But I want us to consider just briefly the culture in which we live. Thinking about worldview or philosophy of life. Let's think about some of the ways that people think. Now, oh no, I got it. All right, I thought I was on the wrong slide. So, the way people think today, and I'm going to be careful, I'm going to paint with a broad brush, okay? I mean, this is a short session, so I'm going to paint a little bit of a broad brush. But there is a huge rejection of authority in our world today. And I understand it. People feel betrayed by people in authority. Don't you? Don't you feel betrayed by some of the people in authority? Has Congress and the White House, have everybody lived up to all their promises? No. Have they ever? No, but we've got 24-hour news and social media now, and so it's in our face all the time. Politicians have let people down. Parents have let people down. Corporations have let people down. So have churches and pastors. You ever been disappointed by church? I have. I have as a pastor. You ever been disappointed by a pastor? And sex and money scandals in churches have just they multiplied this, and people are mad. They're mad. And they don't trust people in authority who have lied. They don't trust pastors because there are famous pastors who have fleeced their flocks. And I get it. I'm not saying it's okay, but we just need to realize this is what we're up against a lot of times. And then, the truth is people lump all religions together. Like, how many times have you heard people talk about how bad religion is because religion causes people to fly airplanes into buildings? Right? Mm-hmm. Well, Muslims and cult leaders have shown the dangers of blind obedience. And so, man, don't do what your pastor says, which I would agree. Don't do what your pastors do, what the Bible says. So in our world today, there's this huge, and I would say growing, rejection of authority. And again, there's a lot of doubt and skepticism. The internet has helped people question everything. But so much is exposed as false. Science has not delivered on the promises that it has made. This is one of the things. So, just give you a little sort of history of philosophy, incredibly brief history of philosophy. And philosophy, and again, this is a broad brush categories, but we talk about pre-modern, modern, and postmodern. So like a pre-modern society is a society that is, like we still have pre-modern societies. I read recently about this island off the west coast of Africa where some guy went there to preach the gospel and they just killed him because that's what they do. I mean, they hump spears, and it wasn't about the gospel. They just, anybody that shows up on their island, they're dead, you know? And it's actually illegal to go to that island. They are pre-modern. They don't have TVs, they don't have telephones, they have no technology, they have no modern medicine. So we call them pre-modern. But then modernism is what was brought in like with the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution. So now we have art, we have education, we have philosophy, we have science, we have everything being industrialized where you can move to mass manufacturing. And what are we told? We're told this is going to make life better. And in a lot of ways it did, didn't it? I mean, I don't want to go back to pre-air conditioning. No. My dad used to tell people, they go, well, I just long for the good old days. And Dad goes, I love the good old days. These are them.
Yeah.
You know? But what did those things not do? They didn't make everybody happy. They didn't solve our problems. You know, the idea is there's going to be peace on earth. Where, you know, we're not going to have all this. And it just, it failed. And so the reaction to that is what we call postmodernism. And the reaction to that is, well, we were told all our problems are going to be solved because science, technology, education, and it didn't pay off. Therefore, science doesn't mean anything, technology doesn't mean anything. The interesting thing is everybody's saying this with their technology, of course. And so what has happened has just been a rejection of any kind of truth. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. But everything is questioned. I mean, you know, before COVID, the mantra was trust the science. Trust the science. And what happened in COVID? We had like very powerful and influential scientists afterwards say, well, of course we lied to you. We had to get you to do what we wanted you to do. I mean, when they're coming out and saying that. So now we're going, huh? Trust the science. I mean, this is James Tour talked about, you know, we're told over and over, trust the science. And the bad thing is, it hurts science, because I do trust science. I don't trust scientists as much anymore, right? Religion has also given very shallow answers to things. This is something we have not done well, y'all. The church has not helped people think well. Well, the Bible says, therefore I believe it. That settles it. Okay, but that doesn't give anybody anything to sink your teeth into. When somebody's grappling with real issues, the Bible says so. Listen, that's good for us. I mean, honestly, that's good enough for me. But to the skeptic, that doesn't do anything. And we've got to be better at that. We are, you know, the world has been told, science has shown us we don't need, so they don't trust science, yet science shows us we don't need religion anymore, right? Evolution has proven the Bible wrong. The Discovery Channel, the History Channels, those have all helped. You know, they push these, with really good marketing and media, they push these narratives about how bad religion is and how it's all just myths and all that, and they lump all religions together. And so, you know, this is the world in which we live. Relativism and pure pluralism. So, again, you know, this idea, well, we were told all these things are going to give us all the answers. Well, there must not be any real answers. There is no truth. I was actually watching a Charlie Kirk video recently, and he said something about the truth, and the person he's talking to on the college campus says, there is no truth. She goes, you think there's an objective truth? And there's not. And, you know, we look at that and go, what is that? That's just where people are. There's this strong individualism. Whatever I think is the right thing, I have my own truth. How many times have you heard that phrase? How many times do you hear that on a college campus, Tam? My own truth. I have my truth, you have your truth. Well, think about that. I mean, that doesn't work, right? Multiculturalism. So, where'd you grow up, MC?
Alabama,
Where? What town?
Florence.
Florence, Alabama. When you were in high school, how many Muslims did you know? Did you even know what a Muslim was?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
How many Jews did you know?
None.
How many gays did you know?
I don't think I knew any.
You probably did, but you didn't know it, right? Yeah, they weren't talking about it back then. Go to the high school today. How many Muslims do they know? How many Jews do they know? How many gays do they know? How many transgenders do they know?
Do you know a lot of that? No, I mean, this is my thought on parenting. A lot of it, I think, goes back to who's the boss in the house?
I almost went down that rabbit hole, but I'm not going to. Here's the thing, people are growing up in a world where their friends,
It's environment.
yeah, their friends believe other things. And they're good moral people. Therefore, you know what? All religions must be equally valid. How can we say, I mean, I've got a Christian friend and I've got a Muslim friend, and we hang out together and everybody just likes everybody, and how can you say one's better than the other? And this is what multiculturalism is. I mean, by the way, I got no problem with a multicultural society, but what it has done is just everybody, I'm okay, you're okay. Everybody is the same. You know, I was actually, it was really funny. I was sharing the gospel with a husband and wife who are atheists. And for him, man, he's just like, you know, what about this argument, and that argument, what about this and that? He's really getting into the heady stuff with me. And she goes, well, I could never believe. And he looks at her and goes, why not? And she says, my two best friends are lesbians. And I could never accept a belief system that says that they're not going to go to heaven. That belief system has to be false because they're the two of the best people I know. And he looks at her and says, that's crazy. Who cares? If it's true, we need to believe it. And if it's not, we don't. And if it's true, and God says your friends are wrong, they're wrong. Now this is an atheist talking. And I'm just going, oh, interesting. But you know, I got two different things going on here. But her thing is, they're good people. You can't tell me anything's wrong there. And that brings up the last thing. There's a faith in feelings. What we feel is all that counts because that's really all we know. This is subjectivism. This is, you know, the my truth thing. And what have we been told in every Hallmark movie ever made? Trust your heart. What are we told by teachers and counselors? What's your heart telling you to do? I've had parents tell me, well, I told them, you know, I told my kids, what's your heart saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
Your heart would never lie to you. The Bible says heart is deceitfully wicked. You know, but people don't, like, do you think people vote with their heads? People vote with their hearts.
Yeah, you're right.
People think with their feelings. So, let's go back to questions. I told you I was coming back to questions. I've narrowed it down to 7 fundamental questions that people ask. These are 7 just like, at some point, everybody asks at least some of these questions. Knowledge, what is truth? The branch of philosophy here is called epistemology. How can we know what is true? In other words, what is your basis? What is your basis of truth? Well, if it can't be proven in a lab, I don't believe it. Well, if the Bible says it, I do believe it. What is truth? How do I know what is true? You say something, you say, well, I believe the Bible's true. Well, how do you know? Why? If somebody says to you, why do you believe the Bible's true? Well, it's God's Word. Well, how do you know it's God's Word? Are science and religion opposed? And what is the role of experience? I mean, I'm talking about how we can't trust our feelings, but does that mean our feelings are invalid? No. God gave them to us. So what's their role? What's the role in experience versus logic and reason? Well, I know what this says, but I know what I felt. Or I know what I experienced. I've talked to so many people that have had spiritual experiences that I'm convinced are demonic experiences. And they'll say to me, I know what the Bible says, but I can't deny what I experienced. Well, no, you can't. So what's the basis? Which of these is true? And we need to be able to defend the Bible as the ultimate source of truth. By the way, the earliest really apology out there about this in the very early church, like the first couple of centuries of the church, was a three-pronged approach that said, you can trust the Bible. I mean, the Bible's new, right? and they're coming along going against what other beliefs have, which don't really have Bibles. They just have all their mythological oral traditions and everything. And they're saying, no, we have something solid. It's been written down. And they're saying there's three reasons we should believe it. Number one, it's morally pure. If you'll follow the moral teachings of the Bible, your life will be better. Think about it. If we follow the moral teachings of the Bible, there would be no more crime. There would not be the phrase unwanted child. There'd be no divorce. I mean, the world would be better. Everybody's lives would be better if we did. It's morally pure. It's historically accurate. Even in like the 2nd century, they're arguing. No. And what they're saying is, okay, you believe in Zeus, but those are fantasy. What we're believing in happened in actual real time. These are actual kings. These are actual countries. These are real people. So it's historically accurate. And then the third is that it's philosophically true. In other words, it makes sense of the world. You worship this fertility god, and you got all these fantastic tales. Does that actually line up with reality? But the Bible does line up with reality.
Isn't it hard though to try to talk about the Bible without it getting into a somewhat heated discussion with some people?
Yeah.
I mean, you just have to let it go.
Yeah. Well, which is why we need to be able to say, here's why the Bible can be trusted. And it has to, if we just go, well, I believe it, all we're doing is saying, well, I'm trusting my feelings, you're trusting yours. Well, why do you believe it? Well, I just do. Okay, I'm happy for you. But that doesn't persuade anybody, right? So, knowledge, what is true? Here's another, what I would call a fundamental question. Origins, where do you come from? I'm not talking about our in-house Christian discussions about old earth, young earth, what does day mean? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how to make a case for the existence of God as opposed to a purely naturalistic framework. Like, is nature all there is? Is the material universe all that there is? Or not? I think we need to be able to show, and we can do this logically, reasonably, the futility and irrationality of naturalism. What I mean by that is, where did the universe come from? Well, Big Bang. Okay. What was before that? It's not even a trick question. What was before that? Well, I don't know. Okay, then can we both agree we don't know? Right? You don't know where it came from. Well, I've got a reasonable explanation. Because if matter is all that there is, either matter is eternal, and no scientist teaches that matter is eternal anymore. Do they, Ted? I don't think anybody teaches that. That was a long time ago people believed that. But now we know, that matter decays and that doesn't work. Something outside of the material universe had to give rise to it. There's a bang. What started the bang? And nobody knows. So, the explanation du jour is that there is a multiverse, that there are many, that there are literally an infinite number of universes. That's the phrase that the scientists are using. And you know why they're using it? Well, that's the only explanation we can come up with.
Can't prove it otherwise.
You can't prove it, you can't disprove it. I listened to Sean Carroll, a cosmologist. I think he's at Berkeley. He may be at he's at USC or Berkeley, one of those. I mean, this guy is very well known. I'm sitting in the room, hear him talking about how there is this master universe that doesn't exist in time, and it spins off other universes, an infinite number of universes, and our universe came from that. Okay, let's say that's true. Where'd that one come from?
We're done.
Yeah.
You always have the where did it come from problem. Where did life come from? Yeah, I love one of the things James Tour says is the more we learn, the further we get away from the answers. Back when the cell was just considered this blob, well, that's easy, right? Yeah, lightning, pond scum. But he says, he asks scientists all the time, I've seen him in debates, tell me what life is. And they can't. He says, well, you're trying to create life. What is it? You have all the building blocks. Why can't you make them live? So this is a question people are asking. And throughout the course of this, I'll share with you some arguments that we have for that. The next one, well, problems. What went wrong? What's wrong with the world? Everybody knows something's wrong with the world. Nobody thinks we live in a perfect world. If they do, I haven't met them. The world is broken, but opinions vary on the underlying problems, which means also there's no consensus on any solutions. We need to be able to answer the question, what is fundamentally wrong with the world? What are some of the answers that the world has for that? What's wrong with the world?
The wrong people are in power.
You've got bad people in power. So what's the solution?
Getting the right
Socialism.
people. No.
It's failed every time because it hasn't been done right.
No. Even when good people are in power.
Here's the problem. One of our answers is that there aren't any good people, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. What else? Income inequality. Right? I mean, I hear this all the time. That, you know, you got the rich people getting richer, you got the poor people getting poorer, and it's creating anger, and it's nobody's treated right, and it's all bad. And again, socialism, we need to get everybody on the same level. We need to share the wealth. That has worked. That worked so well in the Soviet Union, didn't it? I mean, they were flourishing. So it affects real life things. We need to show how the Bible answers this question in a way that makes sense. Now, what does the Bible say the problem of the world is? Sin. And you go actually open your curtains and go, oh, yep. Like what I see out there lines up with what I read in here. But if income inequality is a problem, why do you still have crime and evil and all this stuff? If the lack of education is the problem, why do really highly educated people do bad things?
I think the devil walks among us.
He does.
That's why we have bad things,
Yes.
because you're not.
But we don't even need his help. We can mess it up.
That's true.
So not only can we show the Bible gives a good answer, but we can show the futility of the other answers to this question. Meaning, why does it all matter? Why does anything matter? This deals with subjects of relativity, reality, metaphysics. And the Bible can answer questions like, what's the significance of life? Do I actually matter? Does anything matter? Why do I matter? Where do we find significance? I've been talking to an atheist. We had lunch a couple weeks ago. We kept up conversation. And this guy's really seeking it. In fact, he's been coming to church. He's really seeking the truth. And he said, here's the thing that opened the door for me. He said, I started just realizing. He said, so I'm in these atheist-like communities. And he says, everybody's miserable. And he said, I started just looking at atheism, just materialism, naturalism, whatever you want to call it. He said, and it is depressing. He says, if matter is all there is and I'm a cosmic accident, my life has no meaning. Fundamental significance. I find it fascinating, this guy is seeing that. So how do we, also, what's the importance of community? Like, we know we need people. Well, why do we need people? Well, because back in the caveman days, that's where strength in numbers and protection. Okay, I'm not in caveman days. Why do I still long for community? Why do I long for relationship? How do we define ourselves? I mean, what is gender? What is sexuality? Is there value in work? Why does anything matter? Value, what's right and what's wrong. We got to deal with issues of morality. I had a guy make a comment to me that he said, churches don't talk about morality. I'm like, yes, we do. He says churches won't talk about abortion, they won't talk about transgender stuff, they won't talk about sexual immorality, they won't talk about cohabitation, they don't talk about any of those things. And I said, I talk about all of them. I said, I don't talk about them every Sunday. I said, but you go to any member of Central and say, what does Mike believe about this stuff? Y'all know, right? And he said, well, at my church they don't. And I asked one of the pastors, why not? And he said, we're just not talking, we're not going to talk about this stuff. I think we're missing an opportunity.
What are they preaching?
I don't know. It's a church that I have high regard for, so I don't know. But we need to be able to make a case for biblical morality, which biblical morality is maligned today. I mean, people think we're just backwards, right? But how can we make a case for it actually being good? The biblical standard for right and wrong provides a good and viable standard, while every other moral system falls short and leads to brokenness. Purpose. Why am I here? What's the goal of life? So, like I talked about meaning and significance, like why do I matter? But this is like, what's my purpose in life? What's the goal? Why do I exist in a world where people are struggling to find the purpose of their existence? I think the Bible gives a great answer that transcends the material world. We can make the case for a higher purpose. You live for something that's going to outlast this world. You were built for a purpose that is eternal. And I think it's not enough just to say, well, we exist to glorify God. Okay, how do we exist to glorify God? How do we do that? Had a meeting with a guy this week who had a terribly traumatic experience in his life. And he said, I've been through counseling. He said, I've gotten a lot of help. He says, but I'm trying to find, he says, I'm trying to find something deeper in that. I need something on a spiritual level. This guy doesn't go to church. And I said, well, my answer is you need to get to church. And he's a professing believer. And he said, why do you say that? I said, because there's people in church hurting that God will take your experiences and use to minister to. I said, I know people right now that I can say, go talk to this guy. He's like, wow. I never thought it. Purpose. And what's my purpose right now, today? Not like in heaven. What am I supposed to be doing today? And then finally, hope. Where's it all going? How do we find hope for this life? How do we find hope? I mean, it's like the atheist guy I was talking to the other day. He said, in materialism, there's no hope for anything. You just hope, you wish everything would be okay, but it's not going to be. Christianity is actually the only philosophy of life that provides real hope for this life and for eternity. And we have something real to offer people here. Real. And we can show how all other worlds are bankrupt, vacuous at this point. So I'm convinced in the Bible are sufficient answers to all of these questions. And I'm out of time. I'm not out of lesson, but I'm out of time. So we'll stop it. It is 7:15. Does anybody have a question or two that you're just dying to ask?
Well, do you get very far with these atheists you talk to?
Yeah,
Where
sure.
they listen and
Uh-huh.
well, okay.
I baptized some former atheists. Yeah.
I'll have you, okay.
We send our atheist friends to Mike.
I
Quite regularly, actually.
baptized one of them. Did I baptize Victor? I know he got baptized where he.
He got baptized, yeah, he ended up moving.
Yeah, he
Out of
moved.
Jacksonville, got baptized like in Mineola or something.
But man, that dude got on fire for the Lord.
He did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, like this one guy I'm talking to right now, he's telling me, he literally said, I really hope Christianity's true. I want it to be. He says, because if it's true, it's the greatest thing ever. And he said, he said, I can't just accept it for that. I gotta know it's true. And he's working at it. Okay. I wheeled in a cart of books. Okay, give me 3 minutes. Y'all can come look at all these books up here. So, some starting level books on apologetics. Greg Kokel spoke at our church a couple of years ago. He wrote the book Tactics. He did the Columbo method, if y'all remember that. This was damaged in one of our many roof leaks, or pipe leaks. But excellent little book. When God goes to Starbucks, the idea behind this is the conversations you're going to have with your skeptic friend at Starbucks over coffee. This one's a neat little book. It like some of the stuff. Why not just look out for yourself? Why is God so arrogant and egotistical? Miracles are unscientific. So just it's a neat little book. A little heavier book is John Morgan Montgomery's Evidence for Faith, Deciding the God Question. Faith Founded in Fact, another Montgomery book. So these are smaller books, but they're a little more dense. Truth Decay, my buddy Doug Grotice. This is a really good book that explains the origins and the heart of what postmodernism, this relativism. He does a really good job. This is a good book that will help you see the way people think and why they think they do today. This is basically the classic. If you're interested in reading about worldviews, this is like, I mean, gosh, this was published, this version was from, this is the 4th edition from 2004 and over 250,000 copies in print. This is considered a classic. It's called The Universe Next Door. You can come look at these. It says a basic worldview catalog. This is a super easy book to read. That's kind of an introduction to philosophical thinking of the world today. James Sire. I love this book, but it comes with a caution. Chapter 2 you'll lose sleep. It is
Well,
because,
bypass church.
but chapter 2 is one of the most important chapters. The book is called Why Does God Allow Evil? This is one of the biggest questions. Why does God allow evil? This is the what went wrong problem. Compelling answers for life's toughest questions. And let me just tell you, chapter 2 deals with the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And I'm going to go ahead and give you the condensed version because it comes with a warning label, chapter 2. He talks about how all of these inhuman things that people have done, like with these, Pol Pot, Stalin, and Hitler, and all these things. And he concludes with, these aren't inhuman, they're exactly human. You went to his thing with me, didn't you? Wasn't he great? Oh man, we got to hear Clay Jones speak. Did you get his book?
No.
Okay. This is a good book, but he even tells you the next few pages are going to be very disturbing. Because what he does is he details some of these things.
Was he the one that then followed up with abortion right after that?
Yep. Okay, a classic that's, 400 years old. Pascal was a mathematician, philosopher, like these guys back then. They were amazing. Have you read Pascal?
I know about Pascal.
You know about Pascal. So you probably heard the term Pascal's wager. most people misunderstand Pascal's wager. Most people are like, okay, well, Pascal said, well, if the Bible, if Christianity's true, then everything, it's really important. If it's not true, it's not important. So go ahead and become a Christian just in case it's true. That's not what he said at all. That's not what he said. What he did say is the claims that Christianity makes are so significant that you would be wise to explore them. And you're taking a big gamble if you don't, in case they are true. But this book is called Pensées, which is the French word for thoughts. And what happens after Pascal died, they went into his study and he had just written stuff that was just scattered all over. And they compiled those things into a book. And I have made the comment before that no atheist should be allowed to call themselves an atheist until they've wrestled with this book. Because it is just brilliant. And so, in fact, the guy that I had lunch with a couple weeks ago, I got him a copy of this. And he is currently reading. So, just a classic is Josh McDowell's The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict. By the way, apparently they've left my shelves, but along this, Lee Strobel's The Case for Christ, great introductory book. The Case for Faith, I think The Case for Christ is better. But Josh McDowell, The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict, is, we're going to talk about evidential apologetics, and this is really good. This is the Baker Encyclopedia for Christian Apologetics. I thought I'd bring it in here just so you can look at it. It's literally just like an encyclopedia. It just defines the terms that we use and that the world uses. But the two best books on apologetics are big ones. Faith Has Its Reasons. One of these guys is my buddy, Rob Bowman. You know Rob too, don't you? And this is just a definitive work on apologetics. And it's big. You don't sit down and just start on page 1 and read a book like this. It's more of I'm going to go read about that. Or you look at the table of contents and you go, that seems interesting. Let me go read about that. But it's a good reference book. I love this book. In fact, this is their revised version. The original was about 2/3 this size. And so they added a bunch. I don't always buy a revised version of a book, but this one was so significant. I mean, Rob actually told me, Mike, we've added on, so I got the book. And then my other friend who wrote Truth Decay, Doug Grotice, Christian Apologetics. If I were going to teach a college course or a master's level course on apologetics, this would be the required textbook. I would probably also require Faith Has Its Reasons, but this is like a textbook. But it's just, if you're interested in apologetics, this is just one of those books. So these two, just really, I know they're big, I get that. But you don't just start on page 1 of these. These are just good books to have in your library if you're a book person. So y'all feel free to I've taken too much of your time. Good night. Feel free to come and look at the books.